One Man City player who seems to be closing in on a return to first team action is Brazilian winger Savinho, who has returned to training after a lengthy spell recovering from an unspecified injury that prevented him from playing in any of City's opening three Premier League games of the new season. Now, this development comes at a crucial time for Man City because they're preparing for a challenging run of fixtures now. They've got the Manchester derby this weekend before a Champions League clash with Napoli and then a trip to Arsenal in the Premier League. So, Stephen, how big of a boost is it to see Savinho back in training and if he is fit to make an immediate return for City, how important do you think he can be for Guardiola's side in these upcoming matches?
I don't know if I have to pretend I believe he was injured. I don't know. It's like some of those things where I don't think he was injured, if I'm being
Hmm.
honest. I think the injury was a contractual one, you know. I think they were very much using players the same way Anderson isn't really injured, you know, and he was obviously had one eye out the door and so on. I think Savinho though it was a little bit different for various reasons and so on. But I think they'd been down that path before with Edison. Savinho made it very obvious that he wanted to leave, and it just felt a bit different to the Edison journey, so to speak. Yeah, I think Savinho. I mean, there might have been, but I just don't feel it was genuine. Guardiola at one point saying he forgot that Savinho was injured, or something like that. I'm paraphrasing a bit, but there was it felt like he was covering his tracks at one point. You might remember the quote, Ollie, but there was something where he said something like that, wasn't there?
I mean, yeah, well, I can't remember the exact quote, but it wasn't that convincing from Guardiola
No.
himself to suggest he was injured. So, and all obviously was this coming around because of the links with Spurs in the summer. So, we don't know if he's truly injured or not. But nevertheless, if he is back in for these three tricky games coming up now, how big of a boost is that for City?
Yeah, look, I was one of the ones who wanted Savinho to stay anyway. I think Savinho is a cracking footballer. The only thing he missed last season was goals, and he massively underperformed in front of goal. So bad in front of goal that it felt like an anomaly, if that makes sense. Like I just don't see how he could be that bad in front of goal again. Like he was one of the least clinical players in European football when previously he'd been a pretty average finisher. You know, Girona in particular, and yeah, his career, everything prior to that suggested that he was a pretty competent finisher. To me, when you look at that, and it's such an outlier, in given how bad he was in front of goal last season, I can only presume that was just linked to confidence, the timing of of his joining Man City. If he joined 3 years earlier, I think he probably would have had bagged 10 goals last season. Because I think we talk a lot about the goals that people like Mahrez and Sterling and so on scored, but we forget how often those goals were the third and fourth goals in a comfortable win. You know, like Mahrez in particular got a lot of goals off the bench, which are they're not to devalue those goals. He's got a lot of important ones too, but the goals that they seal a game, they help your goal difference. But they're the ones where the game's in a more relaxed state and it's easier to score. And I don't think we had many of those occasions last season where a team was strolling and Savinho could come on and score the third or fourth goal. Savinho was at Man City 4 years ago. He'd be coming on a lot more as a substitute, rotating with a Mahrez level player, and he'd probably be scored a lot more goals because the game's more relaxed, the quality's better. He's not panicking in front of goals to score the first or second goal to win us the game. Which is to say, to go full circle, is that I feel that Savinho has that quality. It's just last season was it's a weird time for the club. It went utterly crazy in the middle of that campaign around winter where City just lost their heads, and I think Savinho had started really well, was a real bright spot for City, and was inviting really lofty comparisons, and then he just lost his head with the team did, and after that he struggled in front of goal. And I think though Savinho has inherent usefulness and quality that City probably need this season. If his athleticism, his skill, his versatility, I think he could be a really, really useful player this year. And I expect if he plays a lot, he'll score more goals than he did last season. It's not hard, admittedly, but I also think he'll prove that what a lot of people know, he's a really great creator, and he's a really smart footballer who will hopefully do better in a more steady, settled team this year. I mean, it's not a settled team with all the changes, but maybe not quite as mad as that winter spell where City are losing every single week. So I think it's a big boost to have him back. He wasn't injured, in my personal opinion. It was very much just yeah, a transfer rumor thing where you keep the player out of the limelight. But I don't think he's going to be unprofessional. I think he'll be fine. I think he'll work really hard, and I think he's an asset because Oscar Bob has been lent on that side. But Oscar Bob is, despite being 22, which is not that young, he's still very inexperienced at the highest level as a starter. It's the first time he's ever done that professionally. So yeah, I feel like Savinho being there gives us options because he's a different type of weapon on the right hand side, and also can play on the left, of course. But it also gives us yeah, like something that we know, where Bob is still very much an unknown.
Yeah, and even though the summer transfer window has actually closed, there's still a bit of speculation over the future of Savinho. Recent reports have emerged claiming that Spurs remain interested in Savinho and they're lining up a bid in January in excess of around £80 million. So I know there's still around 4 months until the January window comes around, but do you expect, Stephen, that the speculation over Savinho's future to resurface as we head towards the end of the year? And what do you believe City's transfer stance is on Savinho? You know, he's a 21-year-old winger with a lot of promise, and he's only just entered his second season at the Etihad.
This just depends what happens in the next 4 months. Like, if we sat here now, like, what's to say in 2 weeks from now, Savinho comes off the bench, scores, gets a start the next week, bags a brace. And confidence in football can change. One game can change an entire player's career. Like, it really can be a sliding doors moment. He bags a brace. Bob has a decent start, but then Pep starts him, and he scored 3 goals in 2 games at that point because he got off the bench and scored and bagged a brace. And this is me just making a hypothetical, but all of a sudden he's the starting winger. We get to January the 1st, and he's played 20 games and he's scored 7 goals. He's had a hot spell of form, and he feels like, oh, I'm going to start here, and I've got a few assists. And we think, well, no, he's a nailed on start for Manchester City. City, let's say we're in better form, we're doing really well, we're up near the top of the table, had a better start, then better run after the start. And at that point, Sevilla's not going to go anywhere mid-season. No chance. He's not going to randomly leave to Spurs in a World Cup year to join in mid-season if he's just sort of nailed down a starting spot and he's in really good form. The flip side of that, if Oscar Bob nails down that starting slot, and he doesn't get any joy playing on the left because Marmoush or Doku, whoever, start a lot, and then Foden gets minutes ahead of Savinho. If Savinho's not playing an awful lot at that point, the same argument comes in. Well, he wants to get in the World Cup squad, and Tottenham might offer him, more of a chance to do that because they might play him. Then the middle ground is he does okay, and he's a rotation option. I still think at that point in mid-season, City will probably just say no. There's a January tax, and you're looking at 80 million quid, then, mate, not 80 million euros, 8 million sterling, and come back. Otherwise, come back in the summer and we can talk. So I think the likelihood of him going in January is small. I think it's small personally. I think the City still have to find a replacement, and I don't see City. Um, yeah, I just don't see City being fine with that personally. Look, stranger things have happened, and it's definitely possible. And as actually, to be fair, to counter myself, Hugo Viana last season was very obviously very happy to be very active in January. A whole bunch of signings: Marmoush, Kusanov, Vitor Reis, so Nico Gonzalez. So maybe actually, I'm talking absolute nonsense. Maybe we could go, and maybe we could sign a big player in January. I still would argue that it's unlikely because I think it has to be really bad for Savinho for him to want to move. And even then, City have to find a replacement, which I think, I don't know, it feels unlikely to me.